So we are holding in Pesachim Vav Daled.
A kagiga may be brought from the flock, from cattle, from sheep, or from goats, from males or from females, and it may be eaten for 2 days and 1 night. If one slaughtered the Pesach offering for some other designation on Shabbos, he is liable thereby for a sin offering, and all other sacrifices that he slaughtered with the designation of a Pesach offering. If they are not suitable, he is liable for a sin offering. But if they are suitable, Rabbi Eliezer obligates him to bring a sin offering, but Rabbi Yeshua absolves him. Said Rabbi Eliezer, if the Pesach, which is permitted on Shabbos for its own designation, if he changes designation, he is liable, then other sacrifices.
He's liable, comma, then other sacrifices.
I know, I was thinking of your comment, I remember. Liable, then other sacrifices, which are forbidden on the Sabbath, even for their own designations. If he changed their designations, he should surely be liable. Yeshua said to him, not so. If you say thus of the Pesach when he changed it to a forbidden matter, will you say thus of other sacrifices when he changed them to a permitted matter? Said Reb Eliezer to him, let the public offerings prove it, for they are permitted to be offered for their own designations, yet one who slaughters other sacrifices for the designations is liable. Rabbi Yeshua said to him, not so. If you say thus of public offerings which have a limit, will you say thus of the Pesach which has no limit?
In other words, you can only have one korban tamid on Shabbos. If somebody brings another korban as a tamid, then they've messed it up, and that is chayav on Shabbos. But for a korban Pesach, there are thousands of people bringing their korban Pesach, so there's no limit.
Reb Meir says even one who slaughters other sacrifices for the designation of public offerings is not liable.
So the halakha follows Rabbi Yeshua.
My question is between Reb Eliezer, Reb Yeshua, Reb Meir. Okay, when were they all at the same time, or they?
No, they were not. Good question. Very good question. They were not. Rabbi Meir was like 2 generations later.
Right. So because you think you're going to have a conversation.
He's not having a conversation with them. He's just stating it. His opinion is just being thrown into the Mishna as an afterthought, but quite very, very well observed.
Right. If one slaughtered it for those who cannot eat of it, or for those who are not registered for it on it, or for uncircumcised or contaminated people, he is liable. However, if he slaughtered for those who can eat of it, and for those who cannot eat of it, for those registered and for those not registered, for those circumcised and uncircumcised, for those who are cleansed and those who are contaminated, he is not liable. If one slaughtered it and it was found to have a blemish, he is liable. If one slaughtered it and it was found to be to trade for internally, he is not liable. If one slaughtered it and then it became known that the owners had withdrawn from it or had died or had become contaminated, he is not liable because he slaughtered with permission. You said before, Shaul, that Reb Meir was 2 generations apart. But what about Reb Yeshua and Reb Eliezer? Were they at the same time?
Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, absolutely, they were at the same time. This conversation is probably a real conversation that happened between them. Okay. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer were contemporaries, and they frequently argue with each other. Right. And Rabbi Akiva was alive contemporaneously with them, but he was more on the Talmud level to them.
Okay.
And Rabbi Meir is a Talmud of Rabbi Akiva.
Right. Okay.
No, this is my job now. Sorry.
Sorry.
Get protective of my piece in this because you do most of everything else here. Okay. Right. So Perek Zayin Mishna Aleph. Ketzad Tzorin es Pesach. So first of all, as we all know, the Korban Pesach has to be roasted over a fire, and it's not allowed to be cooked in any other way. And in fact, even b'diavad, if it got cooked in any other way, it is possible. In fact, any part of it that was cooked in any other way is also possible. Okay, so we've got to take special precautions to make sure that it is entirely roasted by the heat of the fire. Okay, and to this end, mevin shefud shel rimon. So you bring a skewer made out of pomegranate wood. A pomegranate wood has a particular property that when it's dry, it's really dried, and it doesn't have sap on the inside, because the concern is that if you have a piece of wood that looks dry on the outside, but it's still fresh on the inside, then as soon as it heats up, then the sap will start bubbling out, and where it's in contact with the meat on the inside, the meat will be cooked by the bubbling of the liquid rather than by the heat of the fire. Okay, so that's the concern over here. We want to make sure that there's no liquid coming out of the wood itself. So is
there any
yeah?
is there any alternative wood? Is there any
Yeah.
alternative, or it's just has to be that?
No, it's okay. So there's no doraisa that says that it has to be this kind of wood. It's, by the way, do you have a camera? It would be helpful to be able to see your face while we're talking. The type of wood is a recommendation over here. It's just that it's this is the most. We know that pomegranate wood has a good property, but if you come up with another kind of wood that has the same characteristics as pomegranate, and that it doesn't exude liquid while it's heating up, then that's also perfectly good.
Okay. He does say though that a metal spit will not be good.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to see that explicitly in the next Mishna, so I'm saving that for the next Mishna.
I took a job away.
That's good. Okay, so back to the spit. He so basically impales it from its through its mouth, all the way through its body, out through its tuchus. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that in order to be able to make it kind of streamlined, you cut off its legs. Now you don't break the bones because it's also to break bones in the Korban Pesach. So what you got to do is cut through the joints and sever the tendons. And then he takes the legs and he takes the intestines and puts them inside the body cavity of the Korban Pesach in order to roast them there. Rabbi Akiva Kamin Bishul was there, but that's a problem because there the body cavity of the Korban of the animal is going to form a kind of a pot. And it's going to and the liquids that gather inside there will cook it inside, and it won't be roasted. It'll be cooked instead. Okay, so he says rather in a tolan chutzelo, rather put them on the spit behind the if you can't I think what we're trying to do is make it possible for the animal to be roasted inside the oven, and it's got to fit inside the openings, and if you've got all the legs poking out and whatever, it can be complicated. So instead we can cut them off and stick them on the skewer behind or in front or whatever in some way so that it fits in. I mean, you certainly could, if you had the space, or if you were doing it over a rotisserie or something like that, that might also work. Because I think the general practice was that they would take it and lower it sort of vertically through the mouth of the big oven, with the big circular aperture on the top. Okay, so basically the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva that you can't put things inside the cavity of the animal to roast them. They have to be outside to be roasted properly. Mishna base ein tzolin es pesach lo ala shefud v'lo ala askala. You cannot use a metal skewer. Why? Because metal conducts heat, and then if the metal heats up from the inside, then instead of being cooked from the heat of the fire, it'll be cooked from the heat of the metal, which again is not allowed. Lo ala askala. That's like it's a tray of. It's a tray of sort of a griddle, where you've got the
a roasting tray.
Roasting tray. Okay. Now this Mishnah actually is written this is written actually in chaser form. That there's that we've got some part of the Mishnah is actually missing, that the askala has to, that you can use an askala that has holes in it, but you can't use a roasting pan that doesn't have holes. Why? Because you want the heat of the fire must come directly through it, and it can't be a reflected heat that's coming from the fire heating the pan, and then the pan heating the meat. Okay, so Amar Rabbi Tzadok, Maaseh Rabban Gamliel she'amar latavi avdo. Say utzlei lanu es Pesach al ha'askala. Where so we have a master, says Rabbi Tzadok, where Rabban Gamliel actually did tell Tavi his eved to go and roast the Korban Pesach over an askala. So apparently the askala is okay, and that's why the Mishnah is forced into the Gemara is forced into this position of saying, well, okay, the Mishnah must have been missing something, and there's a nuance here that if the askala is perforated, then it's legitimate to roast over the askala. Okay. Now what happens if he's putting the korban through the aperture of the oven, and it bumps against the edge of the oven? Okay. Now the problem over here is that edge of that oven is going to be hot, and it's going to touch the side of the meat, and that little piece of the meat is going to be cooked by the edge of the oven. So therefore, that piece of the Korban Pesach is actually going to be pasul. It's been cooked by the wrong method. So he's got to scrape off. So klippa, so yiklof, the Mishnah is medayik in the words. Just be careful of the words. Yiklof is a klippa. A klippa is a small piece which is only like a fingernail thick. Okay, the thickness of your fingernail, that's how much a klippa is. And we learned this in kashrus many times, that sometimes you've got to take off the kadei klippa, just enough to scrape off the edge. If you had a contact, say, between basar b'chalav, if you had meat and milk, with the for example, in basar b'chalav we had tata gaver. So if you had something cold on the bottom and something hot on top, the tata gaver. So let's say you spilled some hot milk on cold chicken. So then you just have to scrape off the point of contact from the chicken, and that would be enough, right? So that's the kadei klipa.
What about meat? You're about taking the milk off the chicken. The chicken, you can almost eat the chicken with the milk, in a manner of speaking. But what about meat?
No, the same thing. It's the same. We treat them the same in terms of the halacha and the chatchila. Okay. Notach meirotbo ala cheres v'chazar alav. Now, however, what happens if a drop of the gravy from the meat spilled onto the cheres, onto the earthenware of the oven, and then splashed back onto the korban? Now you got more of a problem because the hot gravy is absorbed more into the meat, and so the problem is that the gravy fell onto the oven and it became cooked by the oven, so that gravy became pasul, and then it splashed back into the korban pesach, and then it penetrates deeper into the meat. So yitolis makomo. Now you got a kadei natila, and that's more like the thickness of a finger. Okay, that you've actually got to get in and cut out, excise it, because the liquid could have penetrated more into the meat. Okay, and that has to be removed. Nataf meirot bo ala solis. Now, what happens if the gravy of the korban pesach fell into, let's say there was some flour, there was a pile of flour or whatever inside the oven that was also hot, and it fell into the soles. And then so the concern is that again it's been cooked by the heat of that's in the flour, and therefore and the gravy itself is part of the korban pesach, and it has to be entirely roasted. So now this flour contains something that is being cooked in a forbidden way. So therefore he has to take a kamitza. He has to take a full because the gravy will penetrate the flour. He has to take it out, remove it, and burn it. So in all these cases where you have to take it out and it's pasul and you're not allowed to eat it, then like the din of any of the korban pesach that's left over, it has to be burned.
I'm sorry, I don't understand something here. Why is the flour even there? Because
good question. So why is there flour in there? I don't know what recipe calls for flour to be inside an oven.
But by Pesach, especially by
but it was there. Well, I mean, Pesach flour that's fair enough. Pesach flour, you make matzah out of it.
Right.
You're not talking about the flour that's automatically. Okay, why? So the Kahati just says she's high solis rutachas v'natzach me'rotev basa Pesach. Aleha b'nitzle mechamas hasolis. It doesn't give any reason why it's there, but it's there.
All right.
Okay, that's all that we know.
It's probably just an example. It's probably just an example of what possibly could happen, and then if it does happen, how you should deal with it.
Exactly. So it could be a hypothetical case study, which a lot of these things can be. You could have something which is a hypothetical case study and say, what would happen if? I mean, think of all of our cases in Yevamos. I mean, you've got 4 brothers married to 4 2 sisters, and then this one dies, and then that one dies, and then this one dies. Like, really, did this ever happen? It's a theoretical question which is brought to demonstrate the halacha, and you can learn these principles out into other places.
Okay.
Sacho b'shemen truma. Okay, so now what you're allowed to baste the korban pesach, by the way. You're allowed to use oil to add flavor to it. So you're not concerned that the oil it's not going to be cooked by the heat of the oil. It's cooked by the heat of the fire, and that's legitimate that you can put oil on the korban pesach in order to add flavor while it's roasting. Okay, but what happens if it was shemen truma that was put on the korban pesach? Only kohanim are allowed to eat it. Im chavoras kohanim yochelu. So if it's a chabura of kohanim who are all allowed to eat truma, no problem. They're allowed to eat truma. Okay, in Israel, however, if there are Yisraelim inside this group, and they're saying, hang on a second, that's truma oil. I'm not going to be allowed to eat this korban. Im chayhu, if the meat is still raw and cold, and they were just preparing to roast it, and all they'd done was they started basting it, and he says, wait a second, okay, rinse it off. It's too bad about the oil that's going to go to waste, but the Yisrael has a right to insist that he is you can't answer his korban pesach for him. Okay, and it hasn't yet been absorbed into the meat. V'im tzalihu, however, if it has already been roasted, then he has to take a klipa off the outside. Now the klipa, this must be talking about where the meat has already been roasted, because it's because if it is actually there's a machlokes in the Rishonim here, that you got to take up a klipa of where the oil went. Okay, some Mefarshim say that this is talking about whether it's hot or cold, because the meat is now soft, it has been, and it's been cooked, it'll absorb more readily. So even though it's not hot, you still have to scrape it off. Okay, however, hang on, there was somebody else who Meiri. The Meiri says that it's only after it's only if it's hot that you have to be concerned. Otherwise, even if it's cold, even if it's cooked, you could still just rinse it off. So that's according to Meiri.
It says it's a cold cooked meat is not absorbent. That's the Rav and the Rashi. In addition to being rinsed, it must also be dried. The Rambam. This extra precaution of drying is probably necessary here because one may not dip the Pesach in liquids before roasting.
Yeah.
But if he roasted it, he must par the outside. And cook the roasted.
He's got to take a klipa off the outside.
Right.
It's interesting, because I would have possibly been inclined to say if it's hot, then you would have to do it for Natila, like we said in the previous case, because that shemen truma is answered to the zar. Okay, I'll leave that as a question why it's a klipa and not in Natila like in the previous case. Anyway, sachu b'shemen shel maaseh sheni. If it was dipped in oil of, or if it was basted with oil that was from Maaseh Sheni. So now, Maaseh Sheni has got a lot more flexibility in who can eat it, but it's obviously it's going to be eaten in Yerushalayim anyway, because it's a korban pesach, which has to be eaten in Yerushalayim. So that part of the Maaseh Sheni is covered, and it also has to be eaten by people with tahor. which means that that if the Korban Pesach was brought b'tumah, then you certainly can't be using Maaseh Sheni oil, because the heter to eat the Korban Pesach b'tumah is only for the Korban Pesach, not for anything else that comes with it. So if somebody's so Maaseh Sheni is not going to wash that. But otherwise, Maaseh Sheni is like Maaseh Sheni oil seems like a pretty good eitzah to have on a Korban Pesach, because in any case, anyone who can eat Maaseh Sheni can eat the Korban Pesach, and vice versa. Okay, so if he does put Maaseh Sheni oil onto the Korban Pesach, lo yasenu damim al bnei chavura. So then he can't turn around to everyone else in his group. Remember, you got a few families all joining together to have a Korban Pesach. And he can't say, okay, this Maaseh Sheni oil was worth whatever 15 shekels. Everyone chip in for the oil, please. So because Maaseh Sheni, you're not allowed to do trade with. Okay, you can give it as a gift. So you can say, fine, it's my Maaseh Sheni oil, please, my pleasure. It's going on here, but he can't charge everyone else for it. Whereas other spices or oils, whatever, if it was chulin, he could say, listen, I'm not laying out all the money to flavor this meat. You can also chip in. Maaseh Sheni, you can't do that. She'ein podin Maaseh Sheni b'Yerushalayim, right? You also the din with Maaseh Sheni, once you've got the produce in Yerushalayim, there's no pidyon for it. You can't say, okay, I'm doing a pidyon on it, it's now chulin, and now everyone can pay me for it. No, that doesn't work, because you're in Yerushalayim already, and you're not allowed to do pidyon on Maaseh Sheni. Okay, fine. Chazara, Pesachim Daled Beis.
Similarly, one who transports crops of Shvita year from a place where they have been exhausted to a place where they have not been exhausted, or from a place where they have not been exhausted to a place where they have been exhausted, is required to remove them. But Yehuda says, we say to him, go out and bring for yourself. Where it is customary to sell small livestock to Gentiles, we may sell. Where it is customary not to sell, we may not sell. But in all places, we may not sell them large livestock, calves or foals, healthy or maimed. Rabbi Yehuda permits selling in the case of a maimed one, and Ben Mishira permits selling in the case of a horse. Where it is customary to eat from roast meat on the night of Pesach, we may eat it. Where it is customary not to eat roast, we may not eat it. Where it is customary to light lamps on the nights of Yom Kippur, we may light them. Where it is customary not to light them, we may not light them. But in all places, we light lamps in synagogues, houses of study, dark alleys, and for the sick.
Okay. Erevin.
Okay. Tuvia, do you have the place and everything? You have it? I want to make sure that he had it. I don't know if I heard you.
No, I don't.
Okay, so for if you have a computer, you could also follow down Safaria. But in the meantime, we're in Erevin Daled Vav.
If there were two, some of the cubits of one overlapping the cubits of the other, they may bring their food and eat in the middle, provided that one does not carry from his into his friends. If there were three and the middle one's area was overlapped by the other two, he's permitted with them, and they are permitted with him, but the outer two are forbidden with each other. Said Reb Shimon, to what is this comparable? To 3 courtyards which open one into the other, and which open into the public domain. If the two made an erev with the middle one, it is permitted to them, and they are permitted to it, but the 2 outer ones are forbidden one to another. One who was traveling in darkness approached, and he knew of a tree or of a fence, and said, my Shabbos dwelling place is beneath it, has said nothing. If, however, he said, my Sabbath dwelling place is at its trunk, he may walk from his present location to the trunk 2,000 amas, and from the trunk to his house 2,000 amas. Thus he may go 4,000 amas after dark. If he does not know, or if he is not conversant with the law, and he said, my Shabbos dwelling place is at my location, his location acquires 2,000 cubits for him in every direction. In a circle, these are the words of Reb Kanina ben Antignios, but they could come and say in a square, like a square board, so that he may gain the corners. Okay.
Next.
My Achala.
Beis Gimel. Challah Beis Gimel.
A woman may sit and cut off her challah while she is naked, because she can cover herself, but not a man. If one can not make his dough in the state of cleanliness, let him make it in cobs, but let him not make it while unclean. But Rev Akiva says, let him make it while unclean, but let him not make it in cobs. For as he designates the name by name the clean, so does he designate by name the unclean. He designates this as challah, and he designates this as challah, but cobs have no part in the name. If one makes his dough in cobs and they touch one another, they are exempt from challah unless they interlock. Reb Eliezer says, even if he withdraws and places into a basket, the basket binds them for challah. If one separates challah from flour, it is not challah, and it counts as misappropriated in the hands of the priest. The dough itself is liable to challah, and the flour, if it is of quantity, it's liable to challah, and it's forbidden to non-priests. So says Rabbi Yeshua. They said to him, it once happened that an elder non-priest seized it, and he said to them, indeed, he harmed himself, but benefited others.
In other words, he took a bullet for the team.
Right. Okay, we have Makshirin.
Makshirin Aleph Vav.
If one blew on lentils to ascertain whether they are of good quality, Reb Shimon says they are not included in the law of water is place, but the sages come and say they are included in the law of if water is place. And if one ate sesame seeds with his finger concerning the liquid on his hand, Reb Shimon says they are not included in the law of if water is placed, but they come and say they are included in the law of if water is placed. If one hid his fruits in water because of thieves, the fruits are not included in the law of Bekin Gatain. There was an incident with the people of Yerushalayim who hid their pressed figs in water because of the extortionists, and the rabbis ruled that figs were tahor. If one places fruits in the rapids of a river in order to bring them with him, they are not included in Bekin Yutan.
Yeah.
One more. Regarding the perspiration of houses, cisterns, ditches, and caves, it is tahor. Regarding the perspiration of humans, it is tahor. If one drank tamei water and perspired, his perspiration is tahor. If one entered drawn water and then perspired, his perspiration is tamei. If he dried himself and then perspired, his perspiration is tahor. Okay.
One more.
Oh, yeah. Regarding a bathhouse that is tamei, his perspiration is tamei, and a tahor bathhouse, his perspiration is included in the law of Beki Yutan. Regarding a pool in the house, and the house proprietor is on its account, if it is tamei, then the perspiration of the entire house that is on its account of the pool is tamei. Getting tired of saying water is placed. So.
Your time, yes, that's better. Okay, we're starting Arachin today.
All persons are fit to declare an Eric vow or to be the subject of an Eric vow, to vow another's worth or to have their worth vowed. Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, women and slaves. A person of undetermined gender and a hermaphrodite is fit to view another's worth or to have their worth vowed, and are fit to declare an Eric vow, but not be the subject of an Eric vow, for one cannot be the subject of an Eric vow, unless definitely male or definitely female.
Because you have amounts stipulated for males and females, and there are different amounts stipulated in the Torah. So if somebody's an indeterminate gender or gender X or whatever they call them nowadays, then they can't be the subject of an Erev vow.
A deaf, mute, a mentally incompetent person, and a minor are fit to have their worth vowed and to be the subject of an Eric vow, but they are not fit to vow someone's worth or to declare an Eric vow because they have no understanding. An infant less than a month old is fit to have his worth vowed, but not to be the subject of an Eric vow. A non-Jew, Reb Meir says, he is fit to be the subject of an Eric vow, but he cannot declare an Eric vow. Reb Yehuda says he is fit to declare an Eric vow, but not to be the subject of an Eric vow. Both concur that they are fit to vow someone's worth and they have their worth vowed. I guess in today's
the difference, you see the difference between an erech and a neder, right? Because if the one is talking about a monetary value of the person in the shuk, and the erech is talking about the specific amounts that were mentioned in the Torah.
Okay. I wonder how the Torah would handle today's generations. Halakas.
The Torah does handle today's generations. I don't understand the question.
I mean, because
We have
they
a
can't-
lot. What happens with transgenders? Well, we actually had, there was actually a case in I think it was in London, where they needed a minion, and there was some transgender woman there who was originally male, and they said, can you join in a minion? And it said, yeah, okay. So they used him for a minion because technically he's a male. There's no the Torah doesn't recognize any such thing as transgenderism. It's an avera, but he's still a man.
Wow.
Interesting that they count him as he's not enough of a mumar to be counted as not counted for the minion. So whatever. It was I saw this article. Did you see the article? It was in Times of Israel. It's an interesting case.
What if he says I need to use the bathroom first? And it goes in the other. I'm sorry, Joel. I couldn't.
Move on.
Sorry. If one said, this is your get. If I do not come within 12 months and he died within 12 months, it is not a get. If he said, here is your get for now, if I do
Hold on. Wait. There was one more in Iraq where you had to do 3.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I suddenly realized you're already on Gittin.
I was
Okay.
so taken. All right. A morbid person and the one being taken out to be executed cannot have his worth vowed or be the subject of an Eric vow. But Kanina ben Akiva says he may be the subject of an Eric vow because its price is fixed, but his worth may not be vowed because his price is not fixed. Rabbi Yossi says he may vow someone's worth, declare an Eric vow, and consecrate, and if he damages, he is obligated to make restitution. Gets in. If one said, this is your get, if I do not come within 12 months and he died within 12 months, it is not his get. If he said, here is your get from now, if I do not come within 12 months and he died within 12 months, it is a get. If one said, if I do not come within 12 months, write and give me a get, give a get to my wife, and they wrote a get within 12 months and gave it after 12 months, it is not a get. If he said, write a get and give it to my wife if I do not come within 12 months, and they wrote it within 12 months, gave it after 12 months, it is not a get. Rabbi Yossi says in such a case, it is a get. If they wrote it after 12 months and gave it after 12 months and he died, if the get preceded his debt, it is a get. If his debt preceded the get, it is not a get. If it is not known, this is the case regarding which they said she is divorced and not divorced. Because once you die, you can't, the get's not.
Once you die, you can't issue a get.
Right.
So yeah.
Even through a shliach.
Right. So the person dying kind of invalidates the shliachus.
Right. If one throws a get to his wife and she is inside her house or inside a courtyard, she is divorced. If he threw it to her inside his house or inside his courtyard, even if it is with her in a bed, she is not divorced. If he threw it into her lap and into her basket, she is divorced.
Okay, that's us for the day.
Okay, so when it says it's with her in a bed, she's not divorced, but she has to really physically hold on to it. She has
to actually make a kinyan on it in order to receive the get.
Which is what they do in Bezdin.
Yeah.
Take it and put it right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody. Enjoy.
Good day, all.
I hope your computer has a refuah shlema and